Hello everyone and welcome back to the workshop. In today's video I'm going to be showing you around this lovely, holy, vintage military armoured personnel carrier thing. So this is a front fender for such vehicle. Not actually sure what the vehicle is. All I've been told is I've got to remake and make two of these. So I won't just be making two of this exact same one. I'll actually be making a mirror image of this one here, but with obviously less holes and a bit stronger. There's a lot of details that go into this. As you can see, it has the radius that travels from front to back, but it also has the curvature on the inside, so the crown that goes all the way along, and then also a tighter radius as the edge drops off. For this, I'm going to actually make the buck for both sides, but it's going to be the one buck that I can then flip all the stations from front to back over 180. So I'm going to be designing the buck so it can be used for both sides. Because it's going to be a mirror version, so they'll be symmetrical, it means that I can actually use the same backbone throughout it, but the stations from front to back will be turned 180 so that it can then mimic the mirror image for the opposing side. This is because the edges of this fender here has slightly different radiuses as they go around. So the inside radius is actually different to the outside radius. The best thing to do that by transferring is making them so they flip over, so they are a mirror image of each other, but also making it consistent throughout. So that way it's not going to be a case of two different bucks, two different fenders. It will basically be the same buck so that it can be a mirror image of itself to then be the opposing fender slash arch, whatever you want to call it. So the only thing now really is, so we get started on making the buck. I'll start off by making the backbone and then putting all the stations in place that I've already cut for it because I've measured the inside for those. I'm already ahead of myself. And then we can start putting it all together. Let's go. Here we have got the backbone for the buck as it goes that way. So this is actually done by measuring and taking a guide of the inside of the arch and then transferring it onto the wood here. These slots here are actually so the stations that go along can interlock and fit in, so they slide in place and then just held in with a screw to stop them rotating. And it means we've got reference points all the way along just to check the measurement of when it's sitting on there. So at the moment, as it sits, you can only really see where it would fit in one singular direction. But once those stations are in place, you'll actually see where the other direction will be curving round. And because it will be curving round gradually each way, that is how we get the measurements to make the 3D form. And this piece right here, this is what the actual inner station looks like. So if you cut through the center of that, that would basically match up with that very front edge of inside of the fender. And that is what basically gives you the good reference of where the whole panel is going to land, the fresh sheet metal that's going to be lying onto there. As you can see, the inner radius tightens up there, but it's a much wider radius as it goes through. Also gives us a good stopping point to where the edge of the fender lands. So that can be folded over or for a returned edge, or even for the wire edge in which this has. So that's what I'll probably be doing the wire edge to match up with that. May even do a little notch so it can properly clip in place. But I think first of all, we'll just see where it lands as we're going along. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put all the stations in place. I've got them already numbered where they need to land because I've taken the references already. I'm going to clip them into place, screw them so they are nice and rigid where they land. And then we can see what the reference is to the buck and the fender, and even see how the fender lands on the buck. Okay, so you can now see how they actually mimic each other. It almost looks like it is the skeleton of this fender here, as if this is just the outer skin of that. I feel this gives a good reference with them side by side and how they do mimic each other and how the buck is used as a reference for the fender. So the best thing now is we're going to place it on there, see how well it fits over. It's a bit tight on that back edge. Twist it around. I would say that is a pretty good fit. So now I'm going to start doing a template of the outer skin so I can lay it over the buck. That will then give me any notes and stuff I need to make along the way of making this replacement part. Okay, I've got the steel now cut to roughly the size I want it to be. Obviously I've gone slightly oversized just in case I make any mistakes, but I've done a line on both sides here, and that is actually where I'm going to shrink to. So I'm going to be using the thumbnail dies and I'm going to feed that into the power hammer back and forth to basically shrink that outer edge. And once that's raised up slightly, that will then bring these sides around even more and really be able to dial in the overall form on top and shape across. So I'm going to bend the ends up to get the rough form of the fender, and then I'm going to hit into the sandbag below, and that will then give it some structure to hold itself in place before it then goes through the English wheel to get the intended crown we're after. Now that I've beaten the steel into a rough shape, it may not look like much at the moment, but all I've done here is I've basically just moved the material. By just moving it enough means it's actually stretching it, and then I can smooth it out on the English wheel along with a bit of extra stretching. So I'm going to smooth it out now, and then you'll start to see the crown taking shape. Just get this in there, and then we'll tighten it up. You can probably see that it's actually curved around too much from actually hammering it, and that's because it's trying to push the material outwards, therefore making it seem like the outside is bigger. Some of it stretched. Just like that, you can already see how it's starting to curve in the center area there. Now, I've pulled the edges up, but start going through a bit more, and then start to bring itself round and into the shape that we want. Now that we're over on the power hammer, I've got the thumbnail shrinking dies in there, and this is where it will really start to take shape. Let's go. move over to the other side. Start in the centre and work my way either way. It's all in the hips, my boy. It might look like a mess, but it is getting there. Okay, now that I've shrunk the edges, I'm going to test it over the butt to see how it fits. I've been checking it back and forth as I go along, but sit that on there, make sure it's landing where it needs to. Just go forward actually. I think that's about it there. So pretty happy with that. Just need to bring this front edge around a bit more, and obviously it's not going to fit properly to the butt where all these edges are roughed up, but other than that I think it's pretty good. Okay, so now that I'm happy with how it's sitting on the buck, it is now ready for me to start trimming all the excess material off that I don't need, but leaving a little bit extra so I can fold it over for the wire edge. So I'm going to start doing that now. So as you can see, I've got the edge marked up here, and this is going to be the line I'm going to put through the bead roller to tip over inwards. With that tipped over, I can then start dressing over the rest by hand to have the wire edge seating on the inside. And I'm going to be doing that on the bead roller here. So the bead roller has these dies set up actually the opposite way around I'd normally have them, but this is so I can actually tip the edge inside by forcing and not really getting in the way of myself. But with the dies being like this, it means it can actually leave a little tipping edge, and then I can just gradually tip it over around, and then yeah, then I will dress the rest over by hand. Right, so now you can see I've actually hammered over this outer edge back inside, so it can actually hold the wire that will be clamped underneath it. And by doing that, it actually makes this whole wing a lot more rigid and keeps the sides from flaring out by themselves instead of just a normal folded edge or even just a straight cut edge. So the next thing to do is bend up the wire, have that sitting in there, and then dress over the rest of this metal to actually clamp it in place. And this right here is all that it takes to make the whole thing a lot more rigid. Obviously by itself, not very much, but when you add that thickness to the outer edge there, it really does start to give the panel a lot more strength and rigidity. So I've already bent the ends round. I've basically had it all roughly put in there, pinched up on the inside edge, just so I know how it's all going to fit in there. And then I'll be doing the other side and join the two pieces together. Taking a moment out of this video to show you some of this weld through primer. It's a high zinc weld through primer, as it says on the can. So this stuff works really well with spot welding. I like to use spot welding, try and keep things factory, but as well as MIG, this stuff works well. Don't ever really recommend weld through primer if you're TIG welding. If you are going to use it, spray it on the panel in the area, but where you are welding, just clean that little edge and the heat affected zone so you don't get any contamination. So yeah, Frost has sent me down this with a whole box of the stuff because they know I go through it a lot. All the projects I like to use this in the areas I can't get to after welding. You know, before I fit a panel or spot weld a panel, I'll usually give this a good coat. But yeah, big thank you to Frost Restoration for sending that down. Go onto their website, look it up, see if it's for you. They have a few varieties. I'm going to be putting this lot to the test at the moment, and I'll let you know what I think. There we have it, 2 fresh wings ready to be fitted. Got the wire edge all fitted up on the inside there. Nice tight radius, consistent throughout. Looking nice and clean down the center. As you can see, I've got the other one sitting on the buck as it should be. And these are now ready to be fitted to the vehicle. And it'll be interesting to see how they look on there. But for now, I hope you enjoyed watching the video, maybe even learnt a few things along the way. Until the next video, please let me know any feedback, maybe some things you'd be more interested in seeing, but until then, catch you later.